Josh.
Robert.
How you doing, man? How you doing?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Not too much, man. Doing great.
Oh, Robert Kryder, folks. This is Robert Kryder because everybody's going to come in the chat and be like, "Who's the guest? Who's the guest?" And Robert Kryder. Now, Robert, you've been a listener to the show for a while, right?
Yeah, on and off. I've caught it when I can. You know, I'm always running around doing something. So.
Oh yeah, you're kind of the Indiana Jones. You and Adam Davies, man. You're always out in the field doing stuff, real, true boots on the ground stuff. So, man, what do you want to talk about? Robert and I are going to have to record together because he's got so much information and there's so much to talk about. And so we can just bounce around, we can do whatever, and we can always redo it on for the podcast. A lot of the people on the podcast don't even watch the live stream and vice versa. So
right. Well,
it's
we'll go
two different ball games.
We can go in any direction that you choose, you know. So you lead me and I'll follow.
Well, let's start with this. You made a post, and I like your post on there. It was very thought provoking. You're in a group, right? And you made a post about the rake, and that post it got like what was it, 200 or 300 comments by the time it was done. It was like
yeah.
Everybody had something to say about it.
Yeah, it got a little
and I
controversial.
got in there and I was like, yeah, I like those posts because it makes people think. And I'm in all these different groups, and I get stories out of them, you know. And I'll sit there and I'll talk to people. You know, a couple hours a day. You got to do some research. You got to go in there and find people that are trying to tell their story. And yours was no exception. It was that post sparked a lot of people. Got a couple stories out of it. I was going to tell you, it was we did a show, and it was Rake versus Chupacabra. That's why I'm wearing my Chupacabra shirt today. And it was you know, we were doing the show, but I think it was a storm or something knocked the show out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually watching that when that happened. So.
Yeah. So Robert and I have known each other for a long time, but we just haven't worked together. And I was like talking to BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, great guy. He's a really mutual friend of ours who was telling me about you. And I said, "Oh man, I'm already there. I've already got him on the show, going to come on the show." But then all this stuff popped off, and we didn't know if we were going to do a show or whatever. And then of course when you messaged me back, it was like, "Well, hey, I'm not going to do one this week." But that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. But now here you are. So I want to go to the Rake versus Chupacabra. I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. You have so much you've done. Like it's such a huge body of work. So I can't even, like you were telling me stuff yesterday, and it was you were all over the place, but it was so interesting. Like you've lived, my friend. You've definitely lived. So let's start with that. Your take on the Rake and what prompted you to post that in that group, and then it started that whole firestorm that we were looking at there.
Well, I mean, it's just one of those things that enters my mind. Every time I've ever seen the video of them and stuff, and I mean, the more coherent stuff, like some of the ones that came out of Spain, and these that didn't look like any hoax or anything, but there they were, and there was a certain consistency to many aspects of them, right? So when I saw that post come up or whatever, or when I saw the information coming around a couple days earlier, I just had that thought. So I threw it out there. Like, how come nobody specifically tried to actually go after one of these? Everyone that I've ever seen on a video that I would, you know, somewhat trust, were all surprise encounters. And they didn't look staged, the 2 or 3 that really got to me. And then there was kind of a comparison with another creature that I saw a couple of videos out of South America, and there was a certain consistency, and you know, there's a niche that could be filled by a creature like that in the natural world. So why not? You know, so I threw it out there and I used the term Rake, which, you know, on the post became quite controversial, because of course that comes from a fictional basis. And it doesn't come from ancient lore and things like that. But what it is it's a popular term that kind of culminates everything together in one basket. So when you say it, people already know what you're talking about over a vast demographic. If I was to use any of the specialized terms or the historical terms, I'd be explaining it every single time you use the term, because no one's really aware of and not many people are aware of those terms that relate to that type of a creature throughout history. So the Rake is a good generic one to use, whether we adopt it or not. You know, we adopt terms all the time, so what's the difference?
Yeah, like for instance, dogman and werewolf. You know, like people who might not understand what dogmen are, they would be able to understand it from the term werewolf, and they'll be okay. I have an understanding of what you're talking about.
Yeah, at
So it
least
just
get an
makes it
instant.
easier. It's
Yeah,
not like the creature's real just because the name came from somewhere else.
right.
Yeah, it's a connotation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I did that, I just and also that's kind of something that we would go after, or I'm not going to say go after like try to chase one down, and trap it, or anything like that. I just mean that we would go try to get evidence of something like that, and go try to encounter it in its process of doing whatever the heck it does, be it sinister or not, right? I mean, most creatures aren't inherently sinister unless they've got some type of spiritual negative aspect to them. And maybe that thing does, but I'm not just going to claim it does all right off the bat. For all I know, it's just a subterranean version of a hominid or hominin. I mean, I never saw one up walking, technically, so I don't know. But that could be just something like that in the natural world, that there's no reason we would have encountered it even at this point. Because we still haven't discovered all the species on the planet by far, and some say we lose them faster than we discover them if you count all those small stuff. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, if I saw one of these things, me personally, I'm assuming that it's got malevolent, malicious intent towards me. But like, I think it's interesting how you view it, to where it seems like you're reserving judgment, because it, it to not reserve judgment would kind of imply that this creature has any sort of interest in humanity, or in human beings at all, and then that may not be the case. It may just be doing what it does, and there's no real there's no real intention behind that. That's just how it is, like kind of like how if a wild animal, like a Bengal tiger, if it mauls a human being, it doesn't make it evil. It's just what it does. It's just what it
right.
does. It's a predator.
And I believe that any animal that's a kind of a higher thinker, even what I believe most of the mammals, I believe, are sentient, I'm sure. So I think that you can develop a psychosis that can become described as an inherent type of evil, and do things that are bad. I mean, there's been rogue animals of all types that have done some pretty horrible stuff. Not kill to consume, just kill out of vengeance.
Or were those two lions in Africa?
The Savo.
What were their names?
Yeah,
the lions of Savo.
Yeah,
it's also Gustav the crocodile.
And Gustav, he's another example, but he's not a mammal; he's a reptilian.
Yeah.
Right, and we've seen elephants in circuses just go bananas and just run through the streets murdering people, because of a childhood conflict or drama that was inherent. So anything that has any higher thought capability is likely, and I say this all the time, more likely to have processes in the mind that get screwed up. So whether it be indiscipline or aggression or whatever it might be. And I expect to encounter that in most places in the natural world. There's going to be flukes, and who knows,
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, Robert, is we were having a talk. Was it yesterday or the day before? We had a talk, you and I. We talked for an hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
but and we went over a case, and it was about the woman in Albuquerque. She lived in Santa Fe. Her brother had moved to Albuquerque and became homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you remember this story. We were talking about it, and she started dreaming that some werewolf, as she called it, a demonic werewolf type creature. Now, I actually talked to her a little bit after we talked. I messaged her and said, "Hey, can you give me a little more of a description?" The way that she described the creature was a giant black dog that she just said it looked like a beast. And she kept telling me that. And I said, "Okay, but give me more." A black dog. She said it would stand up on its hind legs. And she said that it stalked her brother and pulled him into a cave. Now, it was funny. It's not funny as in ha-ha, but odd, interesting, funny, that when he went missing, like they found like his backpack or something. They never found him.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that they thought other homeless people had done it to him, and you knew the exact area. You were like, if he lived in this certain area,
Yeah,
that's very possible. And now, let me ask you this: is there a cave system right there by where you're talking about?
so that uplift in particular is it's a metamorphic type uplift that came from a massive caldera. But as a matter of fact, of a caldera, it's like 14 miles across, the Valles caldera, and that created the Sandia Range. And the uplift itself, the vertical face is about what is it? Well, it goes from 4,500 to 65, so about 5,500 feet. So 5,500 foot of vertical, extremely jagged granite, and then it's capped by a sandstone cap, and it goes up to about 10,700, I think, something like that elevation, very abruptly. And in that are regions no one's, if ever, stepped since Native American times, maybe even for 1,000 years. Nobody's been in a lot of the regions in it, because you'd have to get airdropped or rope in or whatever. I mean, over a vast area of this. And in that type of granite, when it comes up like that, it's extrusive, is full of holes, cracks, faults. So there's just a myriad array of all types of cave and fault systems associated with that uplift. And so, and there's a lot of really sketchy history about it. I think, we were discussing it, and I told you that one of the particular areas that we work, one trail in particular, 30 people in a year have gone vanished. And one of our team, who was USFS management at the time, verified 37 in 3 years off with just one trail. And then, but I know in the area where he probably went missing, in the last 15 years or so, there's been kind of more of an influx of homeless into the Northeast Heights area. And at the bottom of one of those trails is where we actually did, and up into the system where it gets rugged as well, is where we did the work for Oxford University. And those subjects there are somewhat aggressive. And we've, from personal experience, them throwing large enough rocks to really hurt you, football-sized lob and football-sized rocks up over the cliffs above us down to where we are. And that's not good. And then we've also, I've had a dog that was taken there, not me, one of my people that report to us and that we went and worked with a little bit, tried to help out, had a black lab grabbed right in front of him off the trail, and all he saw was an arm, and the arm was every bit of 5 foot. He didn't see anything else, and its hand was big enough to grab the lab with one hand, just pull it off the trail. And then so those individuals up there are pretty bad. Now, also a woman was taken to the emergency room, and I never got an update on her, but she was hit with a basketball-sized rock in the side of the head, and in the parking lot, in the forest parking lot down below the mountain there, at the trailhead of that same area. So the interaction with people has not been good. And then when we did our research and we got featured on the news, the Forest Service closed that area, and they said it was to prevent potential adverse interaction between humans and rare and sensitive species. And that's why they did for the closure, but they didn't specify the species. And then you have to look at the potential for adverse interaction. It wasn't for the protection of a species or to get the impact of a human on the species. It was adverse interaction. And so we can only imagine it was a direct result of our work there. So, and then it was telling, because they closed a certain region from between two major canyons all the way up to the 10,000 foot mark from down below. And in a sense, they may have just inadvertently been marking or relating to us a known territorial boundary of this group, or at least where their activity is. Because they find people, a couple people a year, they get toted off, and they find them or they don't find them, but they get on the news because they're from popular campgrounds and things, and people report them. And then they'll find them, 5 to 7 miles away or whatever, with no shoes on and really rugged terrain where they have to get rappelling gear and climbing gear to go recover them. So whatever that portion is, anyway. But I don't know, what we've been working with is researching Bigfoot activity and aggressive Bigfoot behavior. But the New Mexico, all the natives, even in that area with that range, all know about different types of creatures that come out of the ground that are more likened to what we're talking about. So when we talk about these type of numbers disappearing in real specific areas on that range, we don't know what's doing all that. We do know there's some correlating evidence to say that there are some really aggressive Bigfoots doing bad things, but we don't really know what's getting that many people without any sign left at all. You know what I mean?
And these like when you were talking about the rake earlier, one of the things I noticed, and we just here working in Austin, we deal with homeless people all the time, and I know I myself, Anthony and Tony have all each individually been given stories of very weird stuff from homeless people. I
Mm-hmm.
think Tony, you got one recently. Was it that guy that told you the story about the stairs and all that?
Yeah.
Very weird. I mean, and so we've had homeless people come up to me and Anthony one time. We were working a site, and it was kind of funny. We were kicking him off, but he had a shirt. What was it? A shirt from what's the show? With Mulder and Scully. I can't remember on my mind.
X
X-Files?
X
Files.
Files. He had an X Files shirt on and said, "I believe." And I said, "Do you believe?" And I gave him my card. Well, the next night he was coming through there, and he always pulls a wagon. I mean, this is the site we had last year. It was over at Riata. And he saw us sitting there, and he came up and he said, "Hey, man, I'm not trespassing. I just want to tell you, I got your card." He goes, I thought about it. I watched one of your shows. And this is a homeless guy, but he's got a phone. you know, he's got everything you need. He carries his stuff in a little wagon. And he's not a bad guy. He just was trespassing, and I had to tell him you can't be on the property, whatever. And he's still a human being. I'm not going to be ugly to him or anything. And I was nice to him. I gave him my card. And he stopped, and he was talking to us. And, of course, he tells us this wild story about this rake type creature that crawled out of a tree and came down into his encampment and chased him and his friends in all directions. And it was just low crawling like a spider.
Wow.
And it was weird. He could see it, but he told us it didn't have a nose. And he said that it had the eyes were like up and down or something. And then there was a guy that waited on us. What is it at Plowman's, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And what'd he say? Tell the description of that thing.
Well, he described seeing this thing come out of the wood line back home where he was from, and he said that it looked like this pale humanoid that was crawling around, but it had like 6 limbs and
4 arms.
Yeah, like 4 arms and then its legs. And then like I showed him a picture of the thumbnail we have on one of our podcast episodes called The Pale Crawler. And he said, yeah, it looked just like that, except it had 4 arms and 2 legs.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just so bizarre.
Well, you know,
And you get weird reports, man. Go ahead, Robert.
I was going to say, well, anything that, if it is subterranean, and I mean, look at it, it doesn't seem to have much for pigmentation or anything to the skin. It's usually out at night, nocturnal. The genetic changes that can come just from not being exposed to certain forms of light and radiation, like natural sunlight, could really do some pretty off-the-wall stuff. And it may cause a reason to have basically more genetic mutations because people have been born that way. And, and of course, arms in really weird places. But science has declared there's like 7 sections to a living organism, and each one of those sections you can flip on limbs, or you could flip on whatever. So I wonder if they have maybe a propensity to have more genetic mutation than something else because of the reasons of what they are.
What do you think they are? I mean, do you like your post you made? They're kind of set off a chain reaction, but you didn't like go into a big old explanation unless I got off early because of all the stuff that was being said.
No,
I didn't think you did.
And I kind of leave that up for the people, and so I didn't really throw it out there for the debate more than I did to bring up the idea. Okay, why hasn't anybody gone after him? Why hasn't anybody sought physical evidence or goes to the encounter locations and tries? And for some reason, there seems to be an odd prejudice that gets tossed out, even when a lot of the Bigfooters and people into dogmen and the paranormal, when they hear about that thing, they instantly scoff. And that's odd to me, because that is what you'd expect from a skeptic that doesn't believe that all these things potentially could exist. So why couldn't this potentially exist? When I certainly see a place, an actual niche that this could fill in the natural world. And I don't see why not. Any animal can we see all types of animal forms that have developed to be nocturnal or live, at least semi-subterranean, maybe not 100% of the time. They go out to procure food, but generally, water's not generally an issue in subterranean systems. And then as well, part of the look, part of the demeanor, part of the whole thing could be affected as well by ore bodies, mineral bodies, acids, alkalis, things like that are in water that are subterranean, that they would be evolved with. I mean, we don't know how these things change biologic forms on the long run, and it certainly could even be intelligent and still be horrific to deal with. Like horrific. If its sensibilities, we tend to anthropomorphize just about everything we look at, and to think that it would have to be A, demonic, or B, some type of just driven by instinct killing thing. Those don't have to be the case for an animal to be absolutely horrific to deal with. It's like some species of snakes are so aggressive that you can't deal with them without a lot of expertise, because they just won't give you a break. Like a Mojave rattlesnake versus a blacktail, you can swim next to a blacktail, you can sit next to one, do whatever. They won't do anything unless you push them around. And then a Mojave, it won't even rattle. It'll just bite you, and it'll just do it right off the bat, and it'll relentlessly chase you, biting you if it can. So we think about that, and then think about that diversity with the hominid or hominin type creature evolved to that thing, and what type of demeanor would it need? What would it turn out? We can only guess at that. And to think that it wouldn't end up a quad crawling, at least most of the time, spindly little crazy thing that just eats your chickens and would take people or whatever, I see that as a direct possibility. So why would people scoff at this thing?
Well, and that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up. See, because there seems to be possibly two different things, maybe even more, because they don't all look, first of all, they don't all look the same. We figured that out early on. The reports, like we got reports of one of them in an apartment complex. I don't remember the city it was in. I don't have the notes in front of me for that, but I just remember like it was like it had literally put its limbs up against like two cars, like in between two cars, and it was suspended like that. And somebody walked out and was like, "Oh my gosh," And there was another person that was watching from their balcony. It was an apartment complex, and they told us about it. Very weird. We had a person that used to work for us that gave us a story of this creature that I think, wasn't it? That one was in California too, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, it was his wife. She was from California. He was from Missouri, but it was crazy that the creature was black, though it wasn't white, but it had all the same characteristics of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Tony, you probably remember, he worked at Menlo.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he told us that story about his wife was a tattoo artist, or whatever, but she was like, I saw this creature, And then we got some reports, people camping, different places, but then that one was interesting because in that same redwood forest, we got like multiple reports of these things, like in different color, different shapes. Somebody said that there was one that was crawling around. It was white on a tree. I read that one earlier, and then I haven't gotten to flesh it out or whatever, or talk to the person, so take it with a grain of salt. But they said it had like a green ridge that it kind of showed up on its back and then disappeared. And then they could see like it go back to being white. The only thing I could think of is like some sort of octopus, how they change or whatever.
Yeah,
and I thought that is, yes, and I thought that is so weird,
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking like when you see this thing morph like that, and then I've heard of them here in Central Texas, right here in Central Texas, of them a hunter, a friend of mine, he went hunting out of my cousin's land. And it turned its head around backwards and crawled down the tree backwards. And it was like, whoa. They do some things that, and their bodies can move and morph in ways that are just so bizarre. And I have a story, and I've told this one on the show. It was a guy I used to work with. He was from Puerto Rico, and his grandfather saw this, what he thought was a wolf, with its tongue sticking into the pen, and it was stuck to a chicken. The chicken was like there, and its tongue was like a tube. And he's like, I've never seen a wolf like that. Like it was a wolf-like creature. So when he shot it, because it wouldn't stop doing what it was doing, it like got flat down, squished, and low crawled away. And as it crawled away, it began to turn like that white, pale, or whatever, and all the fur and everything was gone. Almost like it was pretending to be something else. To me, the way that thing sounded was like the chupacabra, but it was like I don't know where the rake begins and the chupacabra ends, and
No,
I
I
don't,
think
you
that
know, I
they're
don't know.
far separated, and there's probably, like you said, a couple in between.
Yeah,
I
so
really do.
so the chupacabra, you got like these dogs that they're calling blue dogs. I know you know what those are. Everybody's seen
Yeah,
those now. Hell,
the
Ken Garrett was telling me
American
the other day he was.
chupacabra.
Yeah, the American chupacabra. But here in Texas, we got both. We got the dog one, then we got this one that looks more like a spindly. And there's been several reports out west of San Antonio. And I thought I'd seen one. I thought it was a big deal, not the little monster one, the dog one. And then Ken Garrett was like, "Yeah, I saw one coming back from Abilene." I was, it's like, okay, well, burst my bubble. Then I guess I haven't really seen. If you want to call the dog man a cryptid, I guess I saw that, but I don't really think those are purely flesh and blood. There's too many reports of weird things going on with those. But you get weird things going on with all these creatures, like and the things that they can do. It defies the laws of physics. I don't know what's going on with that. I can't explain it. I know this. I know that the chupacabra. Some people have reported sort of a pale humanoidal little creature, but it has the spines on its back. Now here's an interesting one. This person out of Crockett, Texas, it was, I guess, back in the '90s. They said they were when they were living there, they had given a report, and that they saw one of these things, and it went into their house, and then the kids chased it out. And I said, the kids chased it out, and she was like, yeah, when we were living there. She's like, the kids were little. They were like 8 and 11 years old. And I was like, they're her sons. I said, they chased it out with a broom. I was like, how does that even possible? Things usually they're aggressive, they're mean. She's like, no, it was a small little thing. She said that over time, though, they would see this thing again and again, and it would be bigger and bigger and bigger until it was about 4 foot tall. And it was like that was it's sitting down, but its legs look like they're all folded up under its body. And it turned grayish green, like over time. Like it started out like a pale, crawling humanoidal thing, and it turned into a chupacabra. She's like, it's the same creature, I'm telling you. And so I don't know what that is, but she called it a chupacabra, chupacabra. I wondered about that because, now I did get a report out of Brownwood, Texas. It was right outside of Brownwood, and it was from a friend of mine that used to help me work on the show, my first co-host. And he was telling me about a friend of his that had told him about a pale crawler rake. What they called it, the rake. And they described it, they described it like to a T. What everybody says is, but it had spines, really small spines. So not all of them have that.
Yeah, and like you said, there
I
could
don't
be
know what
different.
that is.
There could be variations too. It's like a lot of species are extremely similar and completely different. And I mean, they could look almost identical, like a hyena and a canine or a wolf, but they're not. They're closer to a cat. But they fit that niche, so
Yeah.
that's what they develop into. So I think that there's a myriad array of all types of different creatures, and I'm not going to say combinations of creatures because with the natural diversity, you just don't even have to go there. And there may be as well, and there may be purposefully hybridized, or they may be creatures that self-hybridized over time, or even influences from other realms, places, whatever. But I think what we were discussing, at least what I wanted to really see action in and a little discussion start was, why isn't there a focus on some of these that we do have at least some video evidence? And what I like to do is I will take a lot of accounts and then I'll look at the commonalities, and they'll generally start to self-organize, and then you'll see the commonalities between different ones, and it actually starts to filter out, because witnesses see and tell a lot of things regardless of what is there. They can do their best, and people recount it differently, and that's no fault of their own. But the details come out and come clean with enough comparative analysis and no bias. They'll self separate to some degree, and then you kind of get to see a core of what a thing is, in spite of witness deviation. So if you have 5 people and they all tell you the same thing, there will be a core and evident truth to it, and then each one might remember or perceive a part of that event or subject slightly different. But if you just concentrate on the commonalities, then eventually those commonalities put them into different brackets. And
What
And so
let me ask you a question. And we
go
were
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, you're not done. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so in particular, what we were most interested in was the humanoid-looking, gray to grayish ash, white colored, black or dark eyes, black lips, and mouth area, and very spindly form. That particular type is more what I was referencing than any of the variation in a sense, because we do have some pretty good information on those video wise and testimonial wise globally, just like Bigfoot or a lot of these other things. So to make it where it's viable. So I kind of want to get that started, Go ahead.
Well, and now you have been a lot of places and you've seen a lot of things. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And we were touching, we were touching on a lot of different subjects yesterday. I think it was yesterday. One of the things I was going to tell you that you had said that I was very interested in, you were talking about some of the work. Well, okay, let's just, man, what do we say? How do I even bite into this sandwich? Let's just go with New Mexico. Okay. And you were talking about it being the land of enchantment and how there was so much weirdness there. And you said something that Weatherly had said to me about the Central Texas area. Same thing Eric Palacio said. Both of them said the same thing, that they would put it up against anywhere, Newton Basin or the LBL. Tell me about the areas of New Mexico where you're talking about, because I get a lot of weird stories out of that state, especially near Ruidoso with the reptilian. Like we have gotten now, I think 3 giant lizard stories from there.
Yeah.
How many?
Yeah. From there all the way up to the Four Corners. And the only thing about Four Corners is those people just don't tell anybody stories.
Yeah.
They're careful who they talk to.
It's insane. This bear man story we had going on down here. And then somebody reached out to me and they were like, hey man, I saw this bear man looking creature. And it was near Taos, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And then we had this werewolf story we got out of, when it wasn't Tucumcari. What was that little place on the road? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to tell Robert about that.
In New Mexico?
Yeah, it was like, it was
what was that?
What was the name of that? It's a small town. If anybody can remember from a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we talked about, there was a person that was driving a truck, and it was a show. It was one of the shows we did for the Tuesday show, Tuesday. And this guy he told us this horrific story about having a nightmare. Once again, it was a nightmare that somebody had been killed. And we went after I was talking to you yesterday, and I showed Anthony that email, and I said, look, 2 people, 2 different parts of New Mexico, of course, but dreaming about something killing somebody. And I'm going to tell you this, because New Mexico has a lot of weird, like almost magic. I mean, I would say magic for real. I mean, there is a lot of magic there. But there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on there, and it's unexplainable. You can't explain it. I had to pull over one time because I was driving a vehicle, and some people, and not my wife now, she's not that kind of person. She knows to put oil in the car, but this person was like, I hear this knocking, clanging noise, and I'm like, what is that? And so we're like outside of not Santa Fe. God, what is that town? The one that everybody talks about that's all mystical and stuff. I forgot the name of it. Anyway, we were right outside of that,
or Taos.
No, not Taos.
Angel Fire, Taos.
Gosh, it'll come to me in a minute. So we were driving, and I pulled over on the side of the road. It was like about 11, and I wasn't that late, and nothing happened. Okay, let's be honest. This isn't a boring story, but I had to check. I was like, your oil is practically gone. I was like, this is about 30 minutes to the next town. I'm like, I don't care. Driving, because I'm not sitting here on the side of the road in New Mexico. And she was like, it's so peaceful out here. Yeah, it's peaceful, sure.
Calm before the storm.
Exactly. New Mexico is called the land of enchantment for a reason. I had somebody tell me that a black cloud chased them through there. Just all kinds of weird stuff. And if I can remember, Hobbs, that's what it was. Hobbs,
I think it's been a focal point, at least on this continent and probably worldwide, for some of the craziness going on. And it goes back as far as even the natives have histories as the focal point for all the weirdness. I know the valley we're in right now, an Apache elder told me that this whole valley was off limits throughout their history. And then archaeologically, you go out here and there's almost a complete absence of any native occupation stuff between now and about 8,000 years
reason.
ago. And so 8 or 9,000 years ago, something occurred and this valley was abandoned. And it's 60 or 80 miles across either direction to, between the mesa lands that represents this valley structure. And, what we see on the petroglyphs, I just did a show on that and it's on our YouTube thing, but you could see why. And they call it the Devil's Burial Ground, and its home in Medicine Rock, which is the home of the little people. And like they said that if you go to Medicine Rock, which is actually south of where we live, about 20 miles, or not even that, 12 miles, that's what it is. And that mesa, it's called Mesa Redondo. But that was known to them, the old ones, as Medicine Rock. They said that was the home of the little people, and if you went anywhere near it, you didn't come back. And they're not playing. They even, told me when the first Spaniard rode through here and they saw a metal man riding a giant dog. Three ladies saw him until he fell off his horse and he was dying in the sun, a heat stroke. And then they got some of the warriors of the tribe and went out there and figured out what he was and stuff. But I mean, that's how much they remember word to word of their history, and so there's no doubt. And then we've received information, and I got to even see a photograph once of an 18-inch tall skeleton in a little wooden box that was found about 25 miles as crow flies from where I am right now, and it was an adult skeleton, and it was just a skeleton. It doesn't look like a fossil. The whole thing was there, so I don't think it was ancient. And it was a cowboy found it, and they preserved it or whatever. And I don't know where that went, And then this area, and especially this is all just this particular area. That's kind of why we're here right now, because like I was telling you, it makes Skinwalker look like kindergarten playground. So that's where some of the first cattle mutilations happened in the 60s. And out here, they were having cows drop from high altitude. One of them was 4 miles from its pasture, wasn't even in where any other cows are. And it splatted like a ketchup sack on the ground from being dropped from high altitude and stuff like that. But these are all ranchers. They don't talk about that even to their neighbors. They deny it and shut up because they just want to do their thing and live their life and go on. And they see most of it as ridiculous. And plus, you don't want to really know all these things and have to be out there. So, and here the understanding is that if you're out with your headlights on, you're out way too late. So all this land, millions of acres of land, is completely abandoned. It's never been developed. There's no roads, no forest roads, nothing, because it's all private. So there's never been anybody on it. They ranch a lot of it. These big horse ranches are 60 and 70,000 acres. Some of them a lot bigger than that. And they run them with helicopter and with sometimes quads, but not much because they're so rugged, a lot of it. So it's either horseback or helicopter. That's how you work them. Then they'll have like one little 2-track road that they'll drive the property and then, whatever. But like on one of the ranches over here, it's 11 hours to get to the bunkhouse where all the hands stay on the ranch. Just one-way drive on dirt roads just to get into the ranch that deep. So what I'm trying to put across is this area has been and remains completely wild, basically. Whatever's out there could be out there and no one knows what it is. And so I think that's one reason that it's so high. I think it goes both ways. I think part of the reason that no one's here is because of all this stuff. And I think that one of the reasons all that stuff's here is because nobody's here. So, and we've got it all. I mean, the UFO stories are absolutely off the charts. Like we have, Archuleta Mesa, which is the Dulce base. None of that's really a joke, but that's not the only site. There's another one that was listed in the Army Corps of Engineer maps in the 50s, and I can't really divulge exactly where it is, but it's eastern New Mexico, and it's hot spot all the way around it, and it's bad. I know people that have been sunburned by craft at night that they were messing with, and then I got nuked and lost my hair for 2 years from a little chrome ball, and then and it's not uncommon for those things to happen. So there's a good reason why nobody goes out there after dark. I know 2 other guys that were picked up and told they wanted to use those guys to go kill some other crap, and they wouldn't do it or whatever, and they put them out and dropped them off on the highway. I mean, these are long and in-depth stories that go behind these, and they're not joking. These aren't people that make things up. These are grown men who aren't proud of what happened. You know, and it takes a lot to get anything out of them to tell you. So, you know, it's pretty off the wall. And then, you know, I've had reports when we're talking about, you know, other types of creatures right now. So, you know, I've had reports, well, we have pterodactyls here, or pterosaurs anyway. That's a known thing. They've been seen by all kinds of people. The ranchers don't like them. They just call them the big birds. And that's like they say, it's not the mountain lions getting our livestock. It's them damn big birds.
Yeah, they'll come down and swoop them down. Yeah, I've talked to them.
And they've got a range between a couple of mesas that they occupy. And I've had reports from another guy hunting where he's found the egg clutches in the cliffs and as big as ostrich eggs, but there's no ostrich eggs in the cliffs, you know. And to have these reports, and then we got to see a small pterosaur with Jason Kenzie and Joe. I can't remember this guy's last name. They're gonna kill me. And anyway, but so what we've got out here, and then I had also 2 reports of something that looks like a big black hyena, but even bigger than that. And it wasn't a misrepresented or Bigfoot or misidentified Bigfoot or something like that. It was a different animal entirely, and it had longer forelimbs than rear limbs. It was canine, or it appeared to be canine, but much broader and bigger, especially in the shoulder area and up here than any canine they'd ever seen. And the way it ran, they said it ran with its shoulders higher than its rear end, and that it was fast, and it went across the road. Now, both reports we had, when I really got to looking at the details and tried to figure out, okay, where could this fit? What could they be looking at? So something that came to mind was a Dinopithecus. You guys ever heard of a Dinopithecus?
Oh yeah, giant ancient baboon. Yeah.
Yeah, and a horrific looking thing. Nothing like, you know, even the African bamboos. You know, really off the wall creatures. You know, like your worst nightmare. It's the last. It's besides like maybe a rake or something. It's the last. No, it is. It's the last thing I'd want to run into. It's like there's nothing redeeming about their appearance, which is odd because we think that all the canines. The reports we hear, they're all. It's a pretty vicious looking creature, even when it's at rest, in a sense, and so are they. You know, and they have. It just that's what fit the descriptions that we got was something like that, which is, you know, a baboon that goes up to your something like that goes up to your shoulders that looks like a dog, because it does. They have a face just like a big canine with huge fangs,
and they can stand up too. If they
can stand up. Yeah, and they're massive. They're like 7 feet when they stand up. And so I was like, wow, that's. Go ahead.
Like the only problem with that, and we've covered some cases. In particular, there's one that I talked about. There's been 2 different ones. It was near Mason County, or it was in Mason County here in Texas. Those, and then there was one. I think we just got one. Not now. I don't know. We haven't. Have we gone over the Johnson City one yet? No?
I don't think we have.
Okay, we got one recently, Johnson City, and when I was looking at it, I was actually showing Scorp the other day on the phone. We were driving, and we were in the truck, and I said, "Take a look at this." And Anthony was doing something, so but I know you saw it, Anthony. But anyway, I know that was. I mean, I don't know 100% no, but that sounds like a Gigantopithecus. I mean, it just not a Gigantopithecus, a Dinopithecus.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there going like, dude, the head, the tail. The ones out of Mason County, what it was is there were some children. They weren't children. They were older teenagers, and I think the oldest one was like 19. They weren't like little kids or anything like that. But they were shooting fireworks, and one of them had a Roman candle, and they saw something move, and they shot into the brush. There's a lot of back roads and county roads here in Texas that are not paved, and they were driving around having fun in these what do you call it, the gravel roads, and they shot at something, and this one creature pops out into the road, just starts running at them. Then another one did, and I'm telling you, the count that they gave us was spot on to a Dinopithecus. But then when we interviewed one of the guys for about a year, I think we just had him, and then one day he emails me and says, "Hey, my friend Mick wants to tell you more about it, whatever." And so I said, "Okay," and so he gave me the story. Now he's got a pretty good job up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he doesn't want to give his full name. But I said, okay, look, that's fine. I'm not going to give it, whatever. people think you're crazy. You saw a Bigfoot or a dog man, people think you're crazy. But this thing, when the way he described it though, was a little different than his buddy, the way he described it. And now, like you were saying, it's all on their perspectives or whatever. But it still sounded like it could have been like a Dinopithecus because of the baboonish, the way it was, the way it ran. You know, because I've seen baboons in Africa, straight up seen them. I know what they
Yeah.
look like. And this thing was running, you know, hunched over, and then kind of stood up. And but then when it stood up, they were like, maybe 7 foot tall, standing up, and then it got back down. Now, what I can say is this: I saw this werewolf-looking creature. I don't call it a dog man because I don't know what the hell it was. I saw one that was, you know, looked like a werewolf, and it was wolf-like. I give you my word. That thing looked like a wolf, but it looked big and humanoid, wolf shape, and it was tall, and it didn't look anything like a baboon.
Right.
I mean, I could sit here and tell you 100% it did not look like a baboon. The thing it looked like, and I have it right here, folks. I've shown you this before. It looked, he's got some maracas. He's having fun, but it kind of looked like that. Like if you open the mouth a little bit there, but that's Charlie Perez's sculpture. I give him credit for that. But that's the thing. I mean, and then Sibylla Irwin drew a picture of it that was a little more accurate because it was thicker on the sides. Big, wide creature that had a wolf's head on it. Did not look baboonish to me at all.
Well, you know, the ones we got reports of were like, they don't look like, and when I see renderings of that particular creature, it doesn't look like a wolf or like a baboon to me either, because their muzzle is so incredibly well formed. You know, their canines are so big that they look like a dog to me when I look at them. So, and that's what rose it to me, was like people were trying to describe it, and it was the same, very similar. But when and I didn't know what a Dinopithecus was, so I started just to kind of look, you know, how big, what in the record existed, what was it, different animals and creatures, you know, besides dire wolf and things like that, which didn't really fit what they were talking about either, because the haunches in the back were always either less formed than the back and shoulders, so their back and shoulders looked massive. And so I was like, well, what would, you know, so, because at first I thought black hyena. That's some type of early black hyena. That's what at first came to my mind until
like a cave hyena.
Yeah.
I've heard of stories of that too.
That's what I thought, and I thought, man, maybe that's what it is. And so, but when I started looking, what popped up, and then what one of the guys identified creature-wise, and it was an artist rendition, so it was pretty dramatic. The one that he saw, but that's what I saw. And I'm like, no way, dude. But of course, doesn't look, you know, primate. It looks canine. So it just, but it's just.
What about this Gugwe?
I have no clue.
Sorry, you weren't done yet, Robert.
No, I'm good. Go ahead. I know I'm done. I was just at the end of my thought. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't mean to throw you off. But Robert, what about this Gugwe type creature? And if you said you don't know what that is.
Well, no, I know the name, but I've never really done a whole lot of research because I guess there's maybe not enough accounts that I can directly attribute to it. So that. Yeah. So what I know of it was pretty vague and could be easily attributed to something else, and I didn't ever have enough look into it to know, you know. So about all I know is the name.
Well, I got one for you, New Mexico. I'm not going to say it on the show. Maybe I can get her to tell you.
Yeah,
we have one. Yeah, it was in southern New Mexico, I believe. I can tell you this: there's another one in Arizona I got that was very similar to that. But these though, the ones that we got reports of, and I don't know if we got 3 or 4 in that New Mexico, Arizona southern border area. What I wonder though is because they're really tall and they're kind of rangy looking. They don't look like these big hulking ones that we've heard of, like from other states like Arkansas and different places like that, saying that they've seen this upstate New York. Somebody gave me a report of this huge, massive creature with a big snout, with a small muzzle, you know, wide head. But it was Bigfoot, like had straight legs. Now this one here, the one that I was going to tell you about the Gugwe, you know, it was in Arizona. This one, and it was a guy, and he literally saw this thing like messing with the trash and the neighbor's trash, and he's like, I see this snout on it, but I don't see a tail, and the body, like the lower body, looked primate like. Like it had a big butt. He said it had a big butt. That's what he said.
Hmm.
But it had wide legs. And what's really crazy about this one is that when it saw him, it kind of looked both ways and then immediately went toward him. Like it was like, oh, okay, you're out here. He was trying to get his cat to come back inside, and like he couldn't find the cat. The cat never did find the cat. That was a sad thing. But this thing was messing, looking in people's food, garbage, whatever. And it saw him and it looked around and then went towards him, and it had red eyes. He said that what's even weirder though, what he said was its eyes did not start off as red. This is in a subdivision. Like
Right.
I can maybe give you the information, but he said that it didn't start off as red. But then when he started focusing on him, he started seeing the red.
Hmm.
And then when it was running, it started slowly moving and then running. And you could see it kind of like making tracers with its eyes, which was weird the way he said that, but not unheard of.
Yeah, it makes
And
sense.
then he
actually.
said, "Yeah, it does, but it's not. People don't usually describe that, but some people
Right.
do, and some people do." And then he said it was like self-illuminated almost. But I did ask him this, and I said, "Mike, his name is Mike." But I said, "Mike, let me ask you a question. Were there street lights?" And he said, "We had sparse street lights and not real powerful, and we do construction security a lot. And one of the things I notice is the street lights. Dang it, they're the last thing to come on, and we we need them." And the city or whatever county, they always take so long to get those put in, and it really could help us a lot, but they don't. So then this thing's running toward him. He said once it came out into the street light, he goes, it was already glowing, the red eyes. Because I was asking, I know where you're going with that. He was like, no, it
Hmm.
was self illuminating. And then he said that it was only about 6.5 feet tall, but he said, I'm not joking, it must have been 4 foot wide. And he said that the shoulders, at least the legs, had tapered down the body, but the legs were straight, and it had like he said, a big butt. And he said it looked almost like a human with a lot of fur. And I said, fur or hair? Now that's the difference.
Sure.
He said, no, no, no. It was fur. It was furry, like an ape, but it had a weird looking kind of wolf like snout. And he said, have you ever heard of anything like that? And his daughter's in the background, actually his granddaughter, and that she watches the show. And she was like, yes, he's heard of it. Just tell him. And he goes, okay, okay. He doesn't watch my show. She does. Thank goodness her and her husband do. But he's getting up there in years. But he was like, look, man, I know what I saw. He said it happened 20 years ago, but I remember like it was yesterday. He scared the crap out of me. He goes, I ran back inside, never saw my cat again, and doesn't know if that thing took it or not. But I would hazard to guess probably. Like I said, that was in southern Arizona on the border. They were in the suburbs. But what really got me about that incident right there was that like if you go to certain areas and like they get the descriptions, they're very similar of it's almost like there's a type that lives in that area.
Sure.
But even then with the type, like you'll get weird reports like, okay, here in Central Texas and like near Thorndale, that area, Thorndale, Lexington, whatever, we'll get Bigfoot reports, but they're always these weird looking, like troglodyte, almost hominin looking Bigfoot. And they look super primitive and they're hyper aggressive. And people will say that they have gray faces,
Hmm.
gray faces. And we haven't had reports of that in a long time.
The ones, both, or several, but I've seen two real clear face to face, and they both had gray ash colored
Yes.
faces. But it
Yeah.
was real,
Oh my gosh.
real ashy, like damn near if you just got a bunch of fireplace ash, the black and the gray,
Yeah.
smoked it all again good, so it was kind of mottled a little bit. And then one of them George has real orange hair, real orangey, but it's on the scalp. You could tell under the orange, his hair's not all that thick. The scalp under his hair is very dark, like well, I used to have a wolf hybrids, and their hair was, even the white ones, moved the hair to the side, it was almost black, their skin, and his was like that, and then it mottled, so it was very mottled, like uneven complexion mottled, and it was very ashy. So the top underneath his eyes is mottled with a lighter gray.
What the hell is that?
Which just,
what is that?
I don't know, but it's just their tone, but real ashy, not more than you'd think on on a hominin, on any kind of big hominin. You just don't
Yeah.
you don't judge it that way. You know, and that's part of the reason our brains do weird shit, because it doesn't associate some of these traits, and it tries to figure things out and filter them the best they can. So that's what's kind of tricky, really, about them is that, and I think that's one of the reasons they're hiding, and your mind just doesn't pick up on them. You know, but what do soldiers do and things, and especially recon and stuff, they face paint. You know, black is a big deal to break up your shape and not reflect light the same way and all that. So I can certainly see its usefulness.
It's so bizarre when you look at these reports, you know, and like without fail, most of the reports we got, other than the ones we got near Granger Lake, I think it was I think he was on the live stream. I think it was Ray Garza, Anthony.
How long ago was that?
It was months ago, but he talked about seeing a Bigfoot in a boat. He was with his brother fishing at Lake Granger, right where Big San Gabriel River comes.
Yeah.
And they said they saw one that was 9 foot tall, and like they saw the eyes and everything. And those are big. That's a big boy. I mean, but these other ones though, that one didn't look, from what I remember. I can't remember exactly what he said, but if I remember correctly, it didn't have a description like that. It didn't. So you got these weird, and then you have dogmen that just straight up, people see them. They're wolf-like. They're always. I don't even think here in our hometown area, I don't think any of them look anything but wolf-like.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten any that look like the Dinopithecus, like in Mason County. There was another place we got one out of the Mason County. Was it what is that place called? Right outside of El Paso. Look it up. It's on the way. Not Elkhorn. What's it called? Van Horn. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell into the mic, but I've tried to remember. And it's like, yeah, I'm all proud of myself because I remembered something. You know? But no, seriously, that is. It's very interesting that you were talking about the ones. So you saw those yourself, Robert?
You know, the Bigfoot that I just described, yeah, and I've got a little bit of video and stuff too, and it's certainly the one I photographed on the Sandia it's just the yardage between us and them through the foliage, but so they're horrible. But you know, the black, one of them's hair was all black in the photo, and but the gray face in contrast to the black is pretty blatant, and then the ones I've seen close are the same way. It's either darker or lighter, but there was no like flesh tone, you know, and even in the modeling, the lighter parts of the modeling weren't like modeled with like pink. They're modeled with like lighter ashy gray. So that is just really odd, but yeah. And then the big male that I videoed at only like 40 feet, but the camera wasn't the best. His face is that same way. It's to the point if they stood in front of sun-bleached bark, you know, you'd have hell seeing them. I mean, until you see the form of a face, but they could. It's that same thing. It's that same thing.
I got two people trying to. I guess I'll say something here. Shout out to BMR, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, and a shout out to Larry Fisher. Folks, actually, they both, one of them saying, or Larry saying, to give BMR the credit for putting us together. Actually, no offense to anybody, but me and Robert have been friends for a long time on Facebook, and we started talking after that post he made about the rake. What's it called? The chupacabra. But these guys are your fans, and they actually did cut for you, man. They told me you'd be a good guest, so I do give them credit for that. But I was already talking to Robert because of the whatever. My fans like to say, "Hey, man, I hooked you up with this guy," and that's cool. I do appreciate anybody that hooks us up. But me and Robert have been talking already. But just FYI, it's not BMR or Larry. Both of you gave a glowing recommendation for him to come on the show, but we had already talked. But that's like minds think alike. So
well, and I really appreciate, and not to cut you off, I really appreciate as well from those people that are pushing us out there, because you know, we work really, really hard to go out and put ourselves in pretty rough positions to get answers without supposition, you know. So we do what we can.
Yeah, and you're kind of a Indiana Jones of the. You go out and you do your. Do you carry a whip? You have to fight off booby traps and
How do you
stuff.
feel about snakes?
Yeah, right. Yeah, spiders don't bother me,
I
but I'm
tell you
scared to
right
death of
now,
snakes. No.
yeah, you have your own style of hat. Is that the one you usually wear, or is that a different?
Well, yeah, I wear them until I
You wear
wear them
different
out. You know that.
Yeah.
So that's the whole point about it. They just keep the sun off. Basically, I just go
Dude,
down to REI, grab a hat with buttons on the side, so I can get those out of the way, and then wear it. I mean, after a
You
while,
go
when
out
you do
in
what we
these
do, they
dangerous.
look rough.
Oh yeah, you go out in this dangerous terrain, and you go and you do like not. This isn't boots on the ground. This is like expedition type stuff that you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And you guys go out there and you rough it and you try to find these creatures. My problem with that, and I have done boots on the ground. I don't brag about it. I don't talk about it. I went out with Art Vyers, the NADP director here, and he lives at Austin Colony.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out and we went all over Hoxie area, and we went through the Granger Lake area, and we went all through the. There's a lot of reports through that area, and I have no problem go now, especially I did for years. I didn't want to go out and do that because I didn't like what was out there, but now over the last several years, I've had to conquer my fear. We've all had to go out and talk to people at their ranches and their farms and talk to people. One of the things that I have a renewed respect for people who are able to go out there and stay for days at a time, because for me, I'll start getting bored if I'm out there and just I'm not finding anything and there's nothing. It's not going to keep my attention. I'm a book person. I like to read and I like to
Mm-hmm.
get information. And if I'm not getting information, I get antsy. And so that's my thing. That's kind of why I do the investigative journalist side of it, I guess, if that's what you want to put a fancy name on it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you do is real boots on the ground. There's all these people out
Mm-hmm.
there claiming they're boots on the ground, boots on the ground. I'm so sick of hearing it, dude. They're not. They just say they are. But you're definitely one of the real people that does it.
Well, I mean,
Now, that being
everybody
said,
does. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. That being said, I have a question for you though. You doing this? And this is maybe a tricky question to answer, but like, what started you? Like, were you just passionate about it as a kid, and you said, "I want answers. I want to know what this is," or did you stumble
Yeah.
into it, or like, how
No.
did it happen?
When I was 6 years old, I made the decision I didn't want to be lied to. Period. I even said a prayer at that young age to God that don't let me be deceived. I just want truth. I don't care what any of the truth is. I just want to know, because I was already just amazed at all this cool, weird shit. And I had seen UFOs as a really small child, and had some pretty sketchy stories go on with involvement with that stuff at a real young age. And then it just, I was exposed to stories and things early from, the homesteader parts of my family, the homestead of New Mexico early on before anybody was really in here. And just a lot of that. So by the time I was at a pretty early age, I already knew that we weren't being told everything. And naturally, when I first even got into kindergarten, I'm asking the teachers about this wild stuff because I'm ready to learn about it. And they're like, that doesn't exist. You're nuts. Well, it's like, yeah, it does. Even at this age, I've already seen things, lady. You can't tell me it doesn't exist at that point. So I was already becoming basically upset with it. And by the time I was, even 9 or 10, and like the show In Search Of came out, I noticed at that time that all of a sudden that it was a question, because before 75, there was not really a question. Bigfoot was undiscovered and it was unclassified, but it wasn't just regarded as a myth. It was regarded as something that people had seen, and it wasn't even scoffed at the way it is now, even to that degree, because it's been perpetuated to be a myth ever since like 75. And you'll notice that's when the Army Corps of Engineers and the other Army maps and things and the sheets telling them what species they're going to deal with. I know you guys have all seen some of that stuff floating around the web. Those things in 74, that's the last time that they were ever included in that. And the next year they were gone. And so there was what appears to be an information campaign to create the narrative of a mythological what if, and to take away some of the reality of it. And that was because everything that got presented to the populace from that, in production wise, from that point forward, left it, for one, in most cases, as a single creature out there that would akin more to the Frankenstein monster thing. And then or that it was probably a big monkey or something like that, if it existed, and maybe it did, maybe it didn't. And so it was removed off the table, so to speak. And so, and I noticed that at 10, 11 years old, when that came out, I noticed that. And so that even drove me harder, because now I'm getting teased. Here they're showing us this radical footage and this great stuff going on. And yet at the very same note, they're saying, but we don't know if this is real. And regardless of what was behind it, when other things with that type of credibility and backstory and things probably would have been taken serious. And I just got frustrated as a child. And so as I grew older and older, by the time I was of course, we went through high school. I did all kinds of dastardly deeds that young kids do and whatnot. And so I was pretty busy until 18. And then when I was, working it out on my own, doing my own thing, just making my own decisions, then first thing I got into was exploring, everywhere, and trying to get to places nobody could get to, because what's there, even along the California coast, we'd just throw ropes off the edge of the cliff, even with massive waves below us, just because we saw a crack from a boat or whatever. And it's like, there's no reason to go look in the crack, but that's the way my mind works. And so it just kind of went on from there.
Yeah. Good night, Sugar Bridges. I think she's checking out. That's one of our mods. I hope you feel better, guys. Say a prayer for her. Thank you for always being there, Sugar Bridges. And so, Robert, the question for me though, you do this stuff, and this has become like an all-consuming passion. It's like it's just always kind of always been like a search for the truth, or
yeah, and I've
something that kind of ramped up recently.
I've done
more ramped up.
Yeah, and I've done work all my life, been in all types of restaurant management to polymer development corporations for like Raytheon, all the way through auto mechanics and auto paint artwork, blah, 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 blah. I've done a million things, heavy equipment operator, mining. But at the same time, everything was to basically just keep the world going, the bills pay, of course, express my artistic or engineering traits that I have, but at the same time, it was all still focused and geared around this. So since I was literally 6, all I wanted to do was find the truth and show it, whatever the hell it was. I didn't care what it was. It made me mad that anybody would even start making things up, basically. And that's a lot of the scientists. There's
a lot of that going on.
So most of what we teach in curriculum-wise is all supposition and theorizing. And it is based on available information, but at the same time, they're not actually going out there and completing all the work. They're not completing the work. That's what gets me. They work to a point, they make a supposition, an idea or two, and then everyone plays with that from then on. And a lot of it is, it's like I saw an example today talking about the inner Amazon. So everything that they're finding is all around the outer boundaries of the Amazon. Now with LiDAR and stuff, they're finding things in the Amazon, in the deep interior, of course, that change everything about history because of the population density and the way that they lived and everything, and what they did and how early those times are. They're finding them as back as 30,000 years, and that's just the way it is. But no one is completing any study. There's been no boots on the ground in almost there's only been 1 or 2 teams ever go in and sample some stuff, and other than that, it's just sitting there. No one's looking at it, like they said, because it's not worth it without being paid to try to make your way to the middle of the Amazon jungle. It's just logistically, it's a nightmare. And just so people assume that, oh yeah, there's going to be an archaeologist, go take a look at that, whatever. Hey man, these guys don't have 50 to 80 grand in their pocket to put together an expedition to get them in the center of the Amazon. We have to be realistic
like the
here.
Congo.
Yeah, without a major, whether it's a production company or it's an academic study or something like this with big funding, or a foundation or something like that that's willing to go take 5 people, fly them in somewhere for 6 months or a year, and pay for all that it takes to support that. Until those things occur, they don't get looked at. So hardly anything's been analyzed, and that's another driving force. And then with me, and it has been in the past, where a lot of it's off limits, and which kind of jerked my chain as well. It's like, you don't even know what's there. What do you tell me it's off limits? I mean, to a point to where, technically the government's not supposed to even own land. It's all our land. They just manage everything. So when there's something that could change the historical paradigm and benefit mankind, maybe in its understanding in a way that'll benefit its future, it's still off limits. So, especially throughout all my early years of doing this, it was pretty much guerrilla archaeology. We went wherever we wanted to go. It didn't matter. If you get chased by white vans or black helicopters, it doesn't matter. And then we get in and look at what we want to look at, and we get out. And sometimes there's been problems, and other times there hasn't. But overall, we've dealt with a lot of three-letter agencies, and I think that, and we've been told that, in some forms we've gained some respect, because, we're kind of relentless and tenacious, and it's kind of respected. And then we try to respect certain forms of boundaries for obvious reasons. And especially sometimes when it comes to potentially relating what we've encountered at certain points in time. So you have to play a balancing trick. And it's not just so, it's certainly not to where you feel, or I feel like I have the information, so I feel good because I'm privy and you're not at all. That's not it. It's more like I want to live through the next 6 months, or I want to be able to tell you the rest of the story without so much interference that you never get to hear it. Right. So.
Yeah, there's this funny meme I saw the other day on my timeline. I think I stole it and was like, I haven't used it yet, but I guess I will. But it says 99% of scientists agree with whatever their funding tells them. It's like,
damn straight.
That's damn straight. That's exactly what they do.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody's paying you a bunch of money, well, and we're not going to name names, but you and I agreed on a particular scientist is very prominent and he gets a lot of press, and I'm not going to say his name, but we know. And you were saying that, and I was over there nodding my head going, yeah, and then we started talking about it, because it's not hard to figure out like who's real and who's not. If you just do a little bit of research and a little bit of work, you could see who's the real deal and who's not. And there's all these people out there, and you were giving me some fantastic advice yesterday, and don't think I didn't listen, because I did. Just because I was blow drying my hair and brushing my teeth and yelling at my dogs while you were talking. I'm joking. I didn't do any of that. But no, when we were talking yesterday, you were giving me some fantastic advice, and you gave me food for thought. Food for thought, which you were telling me about the situations I was going through, and you were like, "Look, they do this, and it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, because why wouldn't there be somebody kind of trying to obfuscate? Because that's the whole plan. I mean, they want to keep people like us away, because if we talk and we start coming up with things, then that's bad. That's not good. They don't want, and then they can't control. There's a certain thing about people like us. We're unpredictable. They can't control like what we're going to do, what we're going to say, and what we're going to pop up with next. They want to be able to have people that they can predict and they can control, and they won't rock the boat. So I noticed that the more I've rocked the boat and the more I've talked to certain individuals, the more trouble I've had. And I try to stay above that, but I also have a very smart audience. And I tell my audience all the time, look, folks, this is what's going on. I keep them in the loop. So, and there's all these people that are just like, well, I just want to hear you talk about Dogman stories, whatever. That's a very small part of this. And that's one of the things that you and I talked about yesterday in our conversation. We got into the whole subject of ancient civilizations, and you made a statement that made me know 100% that you were a smart guy that I could work with. And I'll tell you why. What you said, he goes, that you said where it all begins and ends. And I said, that's right. That's exactly right. Because how are you going to know where you're at or where you're headed if you don't know where you've been? That's a problem.
Fact. Yeah. Well, that's what they say. He who controls the history controls the future. So, and
they have a vested interest in keeping it covered up. They want us to be ignorant. They don't want us to know these things. They don't want us to be over there uncovering things.
And it's really not even that sinister, their motivation. Whoever right? So it's not even in a sense that deep or that sinister. It's actually pretty simplistic. It's more like, man, just shut up and get back to work. Why in the hell do you care about all this side stuff? Get some rest so you can be ready to go to work. Come on, man. I need new teak wood on my yacht. You guys should just be working. I don't understand why you're not happy.
On my yacht.
You should be happy. You got everything. You got stuff to watch. You got stuff to drink. You get all messed up. You can go to sleep.
Bread
wake up, go to work. Listen to you. Have all kinds of drama and loyalties and affiliations and splits. And man, you guys live an interesting life. Just get back to work. So
And us, it's like when they try to put you on a medication, they might as well just tell you, well, what would be best for us is if your whole family was on this medication.
Oh,
And I'm
yeah.
like, okay, well, how about what's best for me is I just don't talk to you anymore and I just figure it out, because
Right.
that's what they want. They want everybody on these meds.
Yeah.
And they want everybody doing all, and then your mind's all, you can't think straight, you can't do nothing, you can't figure anything out. And then every month there's a new, I'm not going to say the name of it because I don't want trouble, but
Thank
there's
you.
a new one that comes out and you got to go get sick again. And then you got brain fog and everything else. Dude, I'm telling you, everything they're doing to me is, like you said, it's geared toward, look, you were supposed to be slaves. You were born as a slave race. You need to stay a slave race, and you need to stay what you're doing. And why are you stay in your lane?
Exactly.
Stop asking questions, and then once in a while they go, oh, we got a smart one here,
Yeah.
and then they throw the dummies at you, and then you have to fight off all these dummies before, and then it wears you down, and you just say give up and quit. That's what they want, and they want you to quit because the dullards, and the best thing that can happen to them are the fakes, because the fakers will get in the way, a dissension of the real truth, and people like you and I don't have conversation. That's the problem right there. And then you get so tired of it, because in that same group that I was getting tired of some of the people's nonsense, and I'm like, look, I'm tired of arguing with these. I can't get anything out of these people. And some of these groups do that. They'll just and I think some of these people are in there just to do that. They're NPCs. They're not real. They're just in there to pretend, and so they can get a rise out of you, and they can needle you. Another group you were talking about, which I'm not going to name, that one there too. They have a pack of hyenas in there that if you say anything, they jump on you, and they call me the woo-woo master in there. And I'm like, at least I'm the master. I'm the master.
Oh, I'm the
like,
I'm like King Larper, man. Me and Tara even got a standing joke. We're the Larpers.
Yeah.
So we make a good sitcom, night with the Larpers or whatever. So that's what we are. We just dress up and play the part. That's all we do. And I guess it's green screen. The rest is green screen. So
so that backdrop of a canyon, of an arroyo canyon, that's a green screen. Tomorrow we'll put an alien back there behind it. That's what we're gonna do.
Yeah. People don't know that's just across the street from Walmart. That's just wherever we we pick Walmarts with a good scenic view, and it's easier, cheaper.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you here for the audience, but I was gonna ask you a question because we touched on Dulce yesterday. Now tell me a little bit about, because for my money, I was, if he goes back to the chupacabra and the rake and all these different creatures, are they there? Or do they have a menagerie there, or one of these bases? Do you think that's true? Do you think that they really do have that? Because I've heard that from multiple people now, including supposed eyewitnesses. I say supposed, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I don't know 100%, and Tony and Anthony don't know 100%. All we know is what they tell us. But what do you think? I mean, in your opinion, because we touched on that a little bit yesterday, do you believe that there could be something there that's like worth talking about?
So I guess I could just start that with a quick question. What don't people do that they have the ability to do? What don't they do when they have the ability to do something?
There's a lot.
Think about it.
Things.
People in general have done every single thing, one time or another in history, every single thing they could, no matter how heinous it is, or how brilliant it is, or how selfish it is, or how giving it is. It doesn't matter. They have done someone, no matter how crazy, sane, or otherwise, has done every single thing they can do. So, if you're handed an unlimited ability to do anything, what are you going to do? That's the potential how you have to look at the human issue in all of this, because there are entities who money is not a question. Of course, there are entities we fund like that. And even like Lockheed said, that if it was worth doing, they've already done it, or they've decided it's not worth it, period. When you can imagine that people with resources in the biologic sciences having those same things would probably say the same thing. We've already done it. We've tried it. If it can be done, we've done it, and we continue to do that. And we only don't do what's not viable, but we still try it. So where does that leave us? right? That leaves us with an outrageous amount of potentials. Where can your imagination go? And the way Lockheed stated it was everything you can imagine, it's already been tried. And this is because they've got, hundreds of super freaks and nerds and everybody else with all their idiosyncrasies coming up with just whatever flamboyant idea, and they'll run with it just to see if it has any validity. You can imagine this has been done with genetics and everything else as well. So I would not discount that. And as well, I wouldn't discount the sensibilities of other creatures, races, beings, being so different than mine that may be what they do. And they may do it for heinous, what we would decide is heinous, or, who knows? For all I know, they're milking humans for basically chemicals that we secrete that could be a form of narcotic to them, and they just may be milking us for space drugs and be
they're milking horseshoe crabs into extinction,
right? And they may be milking us for compounds that make them do one thing or another, feel one way or another. It could be that simplistic, believe it or not. We could literally be the victim of a galactic drug trade.
Right there, okay. I know people are going to laugh and say that's goofy, whatever, but I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to stop you right there. That's something that's crossed my mind because I thought about it. When you think of what comes with the pineal gland and all that, probably shouldn't say the name of it, but think about it now. Could these entities, we're all just part of it, and like one of the people that was a witness, she claimed to have seen what she thought was a vampiric. My audience already knows this story. I'm not going to retell it, but a vampiric type entity, and it was even described to her by her captors. I'd say captors because they were pretending to be her friends. They weren't her friends. They were taking her to a facility, and they were knocking her out with whatever they give her and then doing experiments. But what's crazy though, when you look at that story, and then there's another guy that stepped forward, and then since then another person's told me a story very similar. This guy said so much that he got abducted within a cave. Like this other guy was telling me this story. It was Mammoth Cave, and he went in there, and he told me, he's like, I passed out, got abducted by something, some sort of weird looking creatures. They were blue. He told me that. What's crazy though, it's not that that's not crazy enough, but he said, dude, that was like the 8th or 9th time that he had been abducted, and he had no prior memory to those other ones. But after this one, he had a memory of all of them.
Oh, wow.
He woke up to the reality. This had been happening for a while. Mm-hmm. And he said these creatures that abducted him, I say creatures, I don't know, humanoids, inhumanoids, whatever. He asked them a lot of questions, and they were there in those caves looking for species to abduct. That's what they were doing. It was like a team of them down there, and they were human looking, but they were blue. He said they looked blue. And now if you're uninitiated, and you've never heard of anything like this, like I would say, Tony, Anthony, when we first started the show back in 2019, we weren't getting tons of reports of blue aliens, but now we're getting reports of these alien abductions like weekly.
Yeah.
Because of what we talk about. I don't remember when we started much about like the alien abduction thing was kind of, we were on the fringe of that, but it really ramped up when I and Barton Only, who just left the chat a minute ago. Good night, Barton. But Barton's a good friend of mine. So sleep tight, brother. This is the crazy thing. We were doing like interviews of like 12 different people. By the time we did the fifth, I think it was the 5th interview, 4 of those 5 people who were talking about Bigfoot had been abductees. And it was after the Jesus Payan interview, I believe. And Jesus he started off talking about alien abduction. And I was like, wow. And then afterwards, I told Barton, I was like, is it just me or all these people? And he finished my sentence. He's like, they're all abductees, bro, the way he talks, He's like, it's unreal. I was like, and it just went on and on. Every time we talked to somebody, they were an abductee. Mm-hmm. Interesting about Jesus, he's the guy from Breaking Bad. He's the one that he was at my conference. He was on the panel.
Yeah, I've been in the field with him several times.
Oh, yeah. So you know him then. You know him. And so Jesus had said that he saw a Bigfoot and that happened in New Mexico. So
I'm sure it was probably on really, one of my outings or one of our outings. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think he mentioned your name, and we were sitting there talking, about that, and then we got into this kind of side conversation about alien abduction and what, you know. But this guy that saw these, his name's Nathan. He had this encounter. He said, "Dude, I was passed out, and then when I came back to, my shirt was on backwards because they'll put your clothes on incorrectly." And he was like, "I had memory now of prior abductions that had been happening roughly once a year." And so he was a young guy, and he was with his girlfriend. His girlfriend was sitting there sleeping too, and she didn't have any recollection. She just thought they had taken a nap.
Mm-hmm.
But he said that these beings told him. Now they weren't blue like electric blue like whatever, but they were
Right, right,
light
right. That
blue
cast,
skin,
yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
looked. Yeah, they didn't have eyebrows though, but they looked like us. They didn't have any facial hair. It was weird, but they were just pure, like, you know, they weren't uh angry or messed up. Like they didn't talk down to him or be ugly to him. They treated him politely, but they had a job to do, and they were there, and they had picked him up. And he said that these were not the original beings that had put the tracker in him. When they talked to him, he remembers them telling him, "We found a tracker in you," and they did him a favor and they pulled it out. And he said, "We don't look for humans. We're looking for subterraneans. You know them as subterraneans." Also describing to him that there was a two different races of beings in that area that lived deep within the earth that were very, very hostile and violent, and that they were trying to abduct them, just like the Greys or the reptilians or whatever would abduct humans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because they wanted something from these beings. These beings had something, some kind of enzyme that they used. So it was very interesting when he was
Mm-hmm.
telling us this whole story. What you're talking about sounds very, very interesting because that makes sense. Like, and I made that statement one day. I was at a UFO conference, and I said that to a couple people, and this one lady, you could tell she was a skeptic. That's fine, but she was like laughing. She's like, "Okay, so they're going to take our blood, and that's what." I was like, "I didn't say blood. I said something else, and you're making it funny out of it. That's fine."
Yeah.
I told her though, I was like, and I said, you know, she's got her own issues, but I told her, I said, "Look, the people that I was with, they were trying to interview me for their high school magazine, whatever, newspaper." And I was talking to these people, and then she comes up and starts kind of scoffing and making a joke, and you could tell she was just one of those people there to heckle or whatever. And I said, "Look, these people, okay, that are going through these things, I think when something happens to them, it opens up a new doorway to them because they'll see ghosts, they'll see all kinds of stuff that they never saw before." And this one
Mm-hmm.
lady, she was telling us that she sees these shadow beings in her house like all night, all day now, and she's like, it's a nightmare after she got abducted. So that to me, like, or somebody will see a Bigfoot or something, and then they'll have something will happen
Sure.
to them, and afterwards they'll see spirits and things like that. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
very bizarre.
No, and
Yeah.
that's been reported with lots. I mean, and events follow certain people, and they don't have to be related events. They can be all types of crazy, strange things just happen to certain individuals. I know. I think I'm a victim of that, so I don't know what causes it. Been involved in just too much weirdness without there being some type of synchronicity, whether it be divine intervention or whatever it is. You know, coming together of the planets. Who knows? But certainly does seem to be that way.
Do you think that these beings that like now are we dealing with beings from another? A lot of people don't believe. Bless you. They don't believe in that there's another planet that's involved. I say when you can bend space and time, you can walk out of this planet being another planet. That's my opinion. But
Yeah.
some people say no, it's not what that is. They're ultra terrestrials, interdimensionals, or this, or that.
Well, who are
What
they?
is your
Who
opinion on
are
that?
there? I mean, that's the thing is which ones are we discussing? Um,
Well,
so it's like
different.
it's like the Krill papers. I have papers written by William Cooper as he was writing for his book, and he was distributing those out to 5 individuals to protect his life as a testimonial in the 80s, and I was one of those 5 people receiving them through his attorney, and they go on, you know, all into, well, they go into multiple types, but the main type that they were dealing with as far as our military and stuff that William Cooper was aware of, I mean, that form ingested fluids, mammalian fluids. That's what it consumed. It didn't even consume any solids. And then, it had no digestive tract like we do. It basically secreted its leftovers from the fluid through its skin. And they used an enzyme to clean off this secretion. And that's what their cycle was for eating and things. So, which was also one of the reasons they gave off a particular odor. And then, over the years, it's just a wild thing, because this is one type, and it had been explained to me through the years. There's at least well over 40 different types that they're aware of, that they've dealt with and whatnot, and a lot of them have been here if not here, they stop here, or they do whatever here occasionally, for hundreds or thousands of years, not just one kind. And people tend to do that. We are very simplistic in that form. The potential diversity within range of travel, when you can travel instantaneously or close to that, is through the roof. And our planet, we can read with the James Webb Telescope around other star systems, and we can easily see planets with what we would now call biosignatures, just like Star Trek. We can see the biosignatures of certain planets at great range. So our planet as well has been thrown out that same thing for anyone who could see it in every direction. So it's not like we're way out here and somebody would just run across us, and what are the odds? We stand out like a sore thumb way out here. And we are of potential interest. And so it's not unlikely that many of their potential, there has to be billions of races mathematically. If they exist at all, if there's one, there has to be billions mathematically within range to notice us. So if that's the case, then we should expect there to be, oh my gosh, imagine the diversity, right? And lots of them are going to be nearly identical, just because of the way the law of averages and the way systems work. We're all governed in this physical reality at that point of being a physical thing, and so you end up with like shapes, like forms, and the thing that differs would be the sensibilities of these things. Mainly, that's why when we look at, like you were even pointing out to the fact that when somebody was abducted, that it seemed to be just a matter of fact occurrence. I got a job to do, nothing personal. I'm not going to disrespect you or diss you or anything. We try not to hurt you, as much as we can, even though I'm probably going to traumatize your poor little subconscious till the end of your days, whatever. But I got to get this done. That to me, that's a very, very human way as well, depending on how we regard the species we're dealing with, right? Some are way worse than that. I mean, we're horrible to some. So it seems well within the realm, but what I've learned, at least about what we would call the grays, the smaller ones. So there's the larger ones, which we regard as the tall whites, and then and these are the affiliated too. They're directly affiliated, apparently. But the grays, we got a lot of information was in the writ that I received on them, their biology and their home star and planet, and how many days does it take their planet to revolve around the sun, and all these things, all this information. And one of the things we gleaned was, that really stood out when you look at it across the board, and it's kind of unnerving. If you put 2 and 2 and then add the 5, it's really unnerving. So, because, you have a creature, at least these specific types, that ingest fluids, animal fluids, mainly mammalian fluids, at least here, and that when you look at, and there's powers that be probably don't want me to necessarily make these connections. I don't tell as much information as I make connections, I guess, for people. So if you have a being like that that's here, and it wants to be here and remain kind of unseen, unfound, or whatever, in the planet is going to be where you want to be. And as well, if you travel through the stars and the planets and go everywhere, living in planets is going to be the normal way to do things, just period. Because you can change pressure, you can change temperature and pressure and all these things inside of any rocky body and be cool. So coming here would be no different than that, and they'd have the ability to easily do that. And it's interesting, and I bring that up because with the cattle mutilations that went on in the 60s and up through present day, formidably the tissue that's most often taken is what's called colloidal tissue, or the tissues in the body that produce fluids, whether it be the lymph system, the nervous system, the vascular system. These different systems in the body all create different forms of fluid, the adrenal glands, and each one of these fluids does something and things. So if you have a being that ingests fluids, preferably mammalian type fluids, what couldn't that be what was taking these fluid generating tissues? Now, what are we about to market? This may have seemed crazy in the 70s even, but what are we about to market? Meat that we grow, right? So what if they are taking colloidal tissues to produce cultures of that then produce the fluids they consume? You understand? And this is odd when we look at, so you can also, and anyone can do this, you can go back through geologic records and find extremely geologically stable places, because that's where you're going to want to put something anyway. And then if you look at each time you had mutilation events in different regions, previous to that, within a year or two, you'll have some small earthquake activity. And there'll be a boom or two around 3.5 to 4, 4.1, 4.2. And then you'll have a month will go by, you'll have a smaller series of booms. Then that'll drop all the way down to about 1 eventually. And then within 6 months or a year of that, you will have mutilations happen in a cell or zone around that activity. And so we can conclude, or we should conclude, that those two are likely connected because this happens time and time again. I think, just based on my own information that I've had, that I was able to put together, with other things that I've been told that I trust, is that those are the creation of underground facilities for their population that's here on our planet. And there's more than one. They're all over the place. And that they do that. They blow them out, just like we do nukes. And then they use other, and we can do this too, use other nukes to take care of the radiation from the previous nuke. And in so many days, you can move into these things. And then there are giant glassified chambers that are impervious to just about everything. And then naturally, what you would do if you were a race like that is then go to the surface. Once you've established the infrastructure to produce the fluids, then you would go to the surface, procure all the tissues you need, and then take them down below and then culture the fluids, and then you could move your people in. You'd have something to feed them. And then periodically, you would have to re-up that, right? So every so often you would have to re-up it. And from my understanding, all in all, it's potential, and I was joking about it before, that humans are basically would be a delicacy on that map. And so we may not even be much more valuable other than, choice cattle or veal.
Well, they definitely treat us like cattle. I mean, the whole abduction scenario. I mean, it's
some do for sure. And what I've been told is they're not all the same. They don't have all the same agendas and interests, even within the same species. No. So there's some that agree with the way we're treated, and some that do not agree with the way we're treated. So
yeah, one of the stories I read, I read this, and it was a woman, and I can't remember where I got this from, but I think it was Fate magazine originally or something. There was a story though, and I think I read it in somebody's book too. But it kind of echoed it, and because I remember reading part of it, and I think I looked it up, but I've read thousands and thousands of accounts of things, so
right,
trying to keep track. But this one was Greys that had a woman, and they were arguing with these reptilians, and these reptilians were like, they wanted to kill her. They wanted to unalive her, I guess I should say on YouTube.
right.
And yeah. And
yeah,
so
thanks a lot for that, by the way.
Greys, yeah. So Greys were arguing with these reptoids, and they were like, no, not on our ship. It wasn't so much that they didn't want them to kill her. They were like, well, no, you're not going to do it on our ship. And the reptoid had gotten mad because I guess she had fought back whenever he did something, and he's like, no, we want to, And so then it culminated with one of those reptoids swiping, just clawing one of the Greys and killing him right there. And it was a woman that was retelling this story. and I can't remember where it was at. I was in a book, but I think I read an excerpt of it from Fat Magazine. I want to say that, but anyways, it wasn't somebody's story that gave it to me, but I heard something very similar to that somebody did because I talked about that story on the show, and it may have been when I think when David Wedley was on or something, and somebody said, "Hey, I had a very similar encounter with that, but it was a mantis type looking creature." That story. Remember the last time we did the mantis one?
Yeah.
We got this one right after that, and it was a mantis with two reptoid looking creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And there again, the reptoids were arguing with the mantis creature because the mantis says, no, this is literally describing them as an asset.
Yeah.
And the reptoid was like, no, we want to eat it. They wanted,
right.
and they thought it was no big deal. They were like, you're done with him. Can we just eat him? And they were like, no, this is an asset. And so one of them tried to step up to the mantis creature, and it didn't work out too good for him because the guy that gave us this story, he said that mantis creature had this like weird looking thing that came up off of his hand, and he kind of jabbed one of those creatures and lifted him off the ground and told him, ask me again. And basically was like very adamant that that's not going to happen. And then I'll toss you off of this craft. And then they were like, okay, but it was a telepathic argument, and the other one kind of grabbed some sort of like weapon looking thing. And when he did, this is the weirdest thing well, not weirdest, but this isn't even the weirdest I've ever heard. But this guy told us, he said when this happened, this guy's name was Andrew. He said these two creatures came in and they looked very wolf-like, like some sort of like dog man looking creatures, and and they were with a smaller mantis type headed creature, and that warned them, look, we're going to have a problem here. We're going to terminate you if you continue with this. And so this guy's abduction, that was one of the parts of the abduction. He remembers a couple weeks later, or a couple months later, he had another abduction, and they kind of apologized to him, and they said, look, and one of these beings that was standing there that looked like a human, he was a blonde haired human, and he kind of walked with him because they understood, I guess, that it would be more appropriate for him to be talking to a human looking person.
Right.
And he asked them about that incident that had happened the time before, and he says those are a type of reptilian. There's hundreds of them, but that particular species is very, very violent and warlike, and they'll eat anything, and in particular they like eating people, humans. And he's like, we my species just tries to avoid them because we've actually got into it with them, but was explaining to them that they're all part of like a covenant, like an agreement or whatever. But there's infighting, and like you said,
Sure.
there's infighting even within their own species. They'll fight with each other. And he said there's another species of reptilian that branched off from them and told Andrew they live within the earth and they won't have anything to do with those other ones because the other ones, they said, were actually so violent that they're cannibalistic and they would eat each other, and they
Sure.
wanted to get away from them. So there was a civil war that was fought like 200,000 years ago, and they ended up under the earth, and they've been there ever since. But that there are enclave upon enclave upon enclave of species, and then different levels within the
Mm-hmm.
earth. Yeah, I mean, it is so bizarre. I mean, you get into the whole Dulce thing, and I've had people tell me so many times that they've been abducted or something, especially since we've been talking about it more. And we were talking about doing the UAP project. I had Chris James. I'd like to include you. I was going to have Jason Bland, Nick Redfern, and it was me, Nick, originally me, Nick, and Christopher Jordan. Then we added Daniel Jones and Chris James and a few other people, James Bartley. We're gonna do a big old thing, and I'd like to have a panel and do it over the course of. I was going to do it like maybe next month or something, and just do it over the course of several sessions with like a panel on here. And I don't know if the audience would like that, but we're just going to focus on the UAP project. It's just going to be,
Well, I'm
two
down.
things to me. It's, yeah, unidentified aerial phenomena and unidentified alien presence. I believe it fits either one. But so, Robert, I'm going to let you run, man. I mean, I'll count you in on that. I'll give you the details, and then of course I start, folks. I always do this. I started off writing a book, right? And I'm about two chapters in. I'm like, I think I got this. I'm going to do this, and then I get a call from an associate. It was Nick Redfern, and he's like, "Hey, let's do the MK Ultra." And I'm like, I looked down at what I was actually trying. My hands are so bad I can barely type. What I was trying to type, and I said, you know what? That's a perfect idea because I'm over here turning this into. I thought maybe we should, but we should look at the. I want to look at the alien aspect of it from what happened to some of these people and what their connection to this was, what the alien technology was doing.
Right.
That's something, and I think you and I touched a little bit on that. Was it yesterday? I guess we talked,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely want to get some more information. We'll be in touch, Robert. We got a lot in common. We got a lot to do. So
Sounds
for
great.
sure, folks, we left a lot of meat on the bone. Thanks for coming on, man, and be careful down there in the land of enchantment, my friend.
No, I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. It's been a privilege, Josh. I've was looking forward to it, and it's been a good deal. So it's been great. Thank you.
Tell everybody where they can find you, Robert.
So you can find some of our research. We don't have a lot posted, but you can come check us out and see our services at KryderExploration.com. What we do have in the research archive is pretty off the wall. You might want to check that out. And that will be growing eventually. And then you can also find us on YouTube at KX, Kryder Exploration. We're on Facebook under the name Kryder Exploration, both on the page and group. And then our cryptid hominid studies, or our Bigfoot studies, are at KX Cryptid Hominid, Bigfoot, and more. I believe that's what it is. But you'll probably find it with KX Cryptid Hominid or through one of our other sites, or just reach out and contact us, and we'll shoot you to where you need to go.
Yeah. And Robert Kryder, everybody, the Indiana Jones of the Southwest over here.
Well, thanks, Josh, for letting me get the information out there too. That's what we need mainly, is platforms big enough to handle the load. So we have a lot more to say. So
we do. We definitely do. We need to record. We'll set it up. But thanks for being on, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks, brother. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Okay, everybody. Well, that was the interview with Josh Turner of Paranormal Roundtable. I'm not sure where they're airing that. I'm sure it's live, but I'm not sure where that's being aired. And I'm going to say something right now, because I just noticed, I never have the Streamlabs control up, the GUI up while I'm doing streams. I never can see it. So I'm just noticing that within my Streamlabs structure here, we have lots of subscribers happening. My last was Buster Johnson 17 minutes ago. And what I'm curious about is, where are you guys seeing this? And where are you subscribing? Is this being sent out through StreamYard to somewhere that or Streamlabs through somewhere I was unaware, which is totally cool. I really don't know if it's where it's going. So obviously you guys must be watching it live or watching it now, and to be subscribing as we go. And if not, then I'll have to figure this thing out. But anyway, thanks for joining us this evening. It's been great. It was nice talking to Josh. They're good people. Everybody's got their own belief systems and their own limits to those systems and limits to this and that. And I respect everybody for what they've got. And I just hope you guys and they and everyone that I'm affiliated with gets to learn in a balancing point, or somewhere at least a measure to relate what they're experiencing, what they've experienced, from the physical to our own psyche. So, and I hope it assists everybody. But anyway, it's been a great night. I appreciate you all for being here. I'm going to go ahead and zip this onto YouTube here in a minute. It's not too late yet, so we'll just premiere this, get this cut, and process and premiere this as soon as possible, probably tonight. But thank you anyway, and join us for the next one.